Welcome to the award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by RotoWire's free trial at RotoWire.com/pod. Also, our friends at DraftKings Pick6 and Vivid Seats. It's Friday, November 1st, 2024. Alex Barutha here with Shannon McEwen, and Ken is not here today. Ken is in Montreal. Work on the streets. He's going to see Bruce Springsteen. Is that correct? I hope he has a good time.
Some old guy. Some old guy going to see an old guy.
Yeah. It's going to be the usual format for us. We're going to jump into some news, talk some waiver wire, and Shannon will be doing the old man rant today. But let's jump right in with the biggest news of the, past 24 or 48 hours. Paolo Banchero tore his oblique, and he is going to be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks. As we know, reevaluated does not mean he will be back in 4 to 6 weeks. So if you have Paolo Banchero on your roster, throw him on your IR because this could be a 2-month thing. We just really don't know. We'll talk, one specific waiver wire option later. But Shannon, what do you feel like is the Orlando Magic fallout from this news?
Yeah, it's pretty tough because they don't have a 1-for-1 replacement for Banchero, like most teams when they lose their superstar player. But Banchero, for fantasy players, really tough. Obviously he was breaking out this year, looked absolutely electric, averaging 29, 8.8, and 5.6. It was great to see. It's too damn bad, but for fantasy replacements from the Magic roster, we are going to talk about Anthony Black later, and that was already one of my waiver wire suggestions before this news came out. I do think Anthony Black's the guy to add. If you're looking beyond Black, we've got Jonathan Isaac, Mo Wagner, are two options. I think even a guy like Jet Howard could get more minutes. So they have tons of different options. They're probably going to be very flexible with how they handle it. But if I'm running out to grab one player from the Magic, Ant Black is my number one choice. If I specifically need blocks, then it would be Jonathan Isaac. But even if Jonathan Isaac gets the spot start, I don't think he's going to be playing 30 minutes a game.
Yeah, well, we'll talk more Black later. People who listen to this pod know I'm partial to Mo Wagner. If you're in a 14 team league, I think he could be valuable. And some of it, I would think about if you're in a very deep league. Let's say they start playing more Wagner at the 4. That could mean more Batatse at the 5. If you're in a deep league and you need a center, maybe a speculative ad of Batatse could pay off. But yeah, we'll see. If you have a waiver wire period on Sunday, maybe we'll find out before then who's going to be in the rotation. But if you have daily moves, those are some early options. We also have Victor Wembanyama finally had a kind of put it all together last night against the Jazz. He had some good games where his points were there or his defense was there. But last night, the 5x5 against the worst team in the NBA, the Utah Jazz, he had 25, 9, 7, 5, and 5 for Victor Wembanyama. Officially a breakout game. Any thoughts on this, Shannon?
Yeah, just proof that you need to be patient, even with the players that really aren't that big of a worry. But Wemby's now a top 10 fantasy player on a per game basis for this season, and he will continue to climb and should be top 5, in a week or two. So great to see that performance from him. We had another breakout game last night. Ja Morant, 26, 14, and 10. He did much of that damage in the first half. I think they were up by like 30 at halftime over the Bucks. How'd that game go, Al?
Well, I will say, hey, I had the Morant over on points and assists as one of my best bets. I knew that was coming. I saw that from a mile away. A couple of things here. You mentioned it, Morant. No Desmond Bane. No Marcus Smart. The Bucks are terrible at guarding guards. Now, they're terrible straight up right now. They're 1-4. But they cannot guard athletic guards, especially. And so this was a big game for Morant, who he still hasn't played 30 minutes in a single game. His season high in minutes right now is still 29. He's playing pretty well. Like I think it's just he's easing back into the game. They haven't needed him to play this many minutes. Scottie Pippen Jr. has looked really good. But obviously, if you've been rostering Morant and sort of just waiting for the big sort of breakout game, you finally got it.
Yep.
Before we jump into our waiver wire section, we have a couple of questions from listeners. If you're listening right now, drop a few questions in. We may be able to answer them. James Chan asked earlier, KCP or Anthony Black. I think we kind of touched on that earlier. Anthony Black. I wish KCP was playing a little bit better, but maybe he will get a few more touches. Timo asks, I need a streamer for the rest of the week. Anthony Black or a Kongwu / Risa Shea. Is this as simple as just like Black's going to start seeing a lot more usage, or maybe we can touch on what we've seen from Risa Shea, because the Hawks are dealing with a lot of injuries right now, and Risa Shea's put together some decent games.
Risa, yes. Yes, he's had some good outings, especially the past 2 games looked okay. He's getting some spot starts because the Hawks aren't healthy. Okongwu's similar scenario, right? He sat out a game, which was basically a rest game, but he's been very solid off the bench. He's still playing behind Capella, so his minutes are somewhat capped. I'm going with Ant Black because I think the upside's there, and it's longer term upside. If it doesn't work out, there's going to be a comparable player available on the waiver wire a week from now. But for the rest of this week, give me Ant Black.
Christian asked thoughts on Jonathan Mogbo. We'll touch on that later, Christian. Let's go. Do you have any, what to do with Andre Drummond? Shannon, you are an Andre Drummond. You watched Andre Drummond for a long time. Let's put it that way.
There we go.
Joel Embiid will eventually return, but Embiid, I don't think Drummond is necessarily putting up the like true monster numbers that people were hoping or possibly expecting from Drummond when Embiid is out. So if you have Drummond right now, do you try to sell high? Is this possibly a drop when Embiid comes back? Because he's not lighting the world on fire.
Right. I do think he turns into, especially in like 10 and 12 team leagues, once Embiid returns, I do believe Drummond turns more into a streaming option, great streaming option like daily leagues. When Embiid does sit, the rebound numbers are great, the defensive stats are okay, but he's not lighting the world. He's not setting things on fire here. 1.8 steals, 12.5 rebounds. But nothing like what he was doing last year when he would get spot starts, even with the elevated minutes, because he is seeing, he played 37 minutes against Indiana, only 28, 22, 25 in the other outings. So he's getting minutes, but not a permanent beast at the same level he's been the past couple of years in his purely reserve role or spot start role. If you need the defensive stats, you need the rebounds, then you keep him around for a little bit longer. But a lot of that value is going to just be sunk as soon as Embiid returns.
One last question here from James, and I'll try to answer this one. He asks, any news on Chris Middleton? Is Middleton worth a hold in a 14-team roto? Unfortunately, we really don't have any news on Chris Middleton. I wish we did. Is he worth a hold? I think he's worth a hold. Especially, if you have an IR spot, throw him in there. Hopefully, you can manage it, because I still believe that Middleton can have stretches where he is a top 40 player. It's not going to be every week. It's not going to be for the whole year, but he'll have stretches where he will 100% have to be on a roster, maybe even in a 10-team roto league. So I would hold on for Middleton as long as possible. I agree. It's just annoying that we don't have any updates.
It is. Yeah, the fact that he's doing some 5-on-5 work still makes me optimistic. That was on October 30th. He remains out, but he hasn't been cleared for the 5-on-5 work.
Right.
And the timetable is, to be determined. I'm keeping him, even in 10-team leagues. I'm keeping him. Hopefully, if you have an IR spot, that makes it a little bit easier of a decision. But even last year, we saw in 27 minutes per game, and when he was resting, he would get rest days as well. He was still basically 15, 5, and 5, with some steals, enough 3-pointers, great percentages that he held value. So right now, I'm holding on to him. If you're in a very shallow league where you can make daily moves, stream a lot, that's a different equation there, and it might make sense if you can drop them for someone who does have top 100 value for the remainder of the year.
And this is a decent chance to, like, if you are near the bottom of your standings and your team is just not either looking good or playing good in general, this could be a situation where maybe you float this trade out. You have Middleton and you're like, you send him to a top 3 fantasy manager and you say, hey, look, just send me someone back who's playing right now because I need points. You can have the Middleton thing later. I just need to climb up the standings. Think about those types of trades if you have Middleton and your team is really, really doing poorly so far, because at some point you just need
Yes.
stats.
We're getting
Okay.
we're getting a lot of KCP questions. So I'm just going to
Okay.
address KCP. Wendell Carter, give me Carter over KCP. Give me most options over KCP. Anyone expecting KCP to do anything more than he did the last couple of years in Denver? He's not that dude. He's just not that dude. He's going to get you 10, 11 points and decent steals and 3-pointers. Nothing else. I don't expect him to come out and start scoring 15 points a game. He's never done that once in his career. His career high is 14.5 points, which was in his 3rd season, which was about 10 years ago. KCP is not going to have a huge boost in value with Banchero out. He's going to be better than he's been through the first 4 or 5 games, but nothing more than he's been the past couple seasons.
Before we touch on some waiver wire options, let's have a word from our friends at Vivid Seats. Finally, the NBA is back and court is in session. And to start the season, Vivid Seats is offering fans $20 off their first $200 purchase, because nothing beats seeing your favorite team hooping it up in front of thousands of cheering fans. Every slam dunk, every fast break, every buzzer beater of your favorite team live and in person. Because Vivid Seats is the only leading ticket company with a rewards program, you can earn perks on every purchase, like amazing deals and unrivaled annual rewards all season long. Plus, with a 100% buyer guarantee, you can be sure your ticket will be as legit as your love for the game. Visit vividseats.com or download the app today and use promo code RotoWire for $20 off your first $200 purchase. That's promo code ROTOWIRE for $20 off your first minimum $200 ticket purchase. Download the app or visit vividseats.com. Vivid Seats, experience it live. All right. Choo-choo. Let's go to the waiver wire. Every team next week plays either 3 or 4 games, and most of the teams play 4 games. So this is not really a streaming week. Decent week to pick up some long-term options if you want, but a couple of my guys will be streaming options. I'm going to jump right in. Payton Pritchard of the Boston Celtics, 33% rostered in Yahoo, 22% rostered on ESPN. Yes, he's hot from 3, shooting 47% from distance, but he's still launching 10 in his 28 minutes per game. He is out there firing away. 3 assists per game and 1 steal. It's fine. Not great, but they have 4 games next week. If you need a guard, Pritchard is most likely available in your league. They're not forcing minutes to Drew Holiday. They're not force feeding minutes to, Al Horford's going to sit again tonight. He's going to continue sitting games. Their rotation, I think, is going to lean small on a lot of nights. I would say just add Pritchard and ride him while he's hot, especially while the Pistons. The Celtics have 4 games.
Yep, like that pickup. I do worry a little bit about it just being a hot shooting streak, and the fact that he hasn't been doing much other than scoring. But Pritchard's legit, and it's pretty obvious that the Celtics are going to lean heavier, more heavily on him than they did last year, which was alluded to in the offseason too. You had Jaylen Brown, talking trash about the Pistons in relation to Pritchard closing out games for him. My first waiver wire suggestion, and this guy needs to be hammered in any league size. Bilal Coulibaly absolutely breaking out for the Wizards. He's 32% rostered on Yahoo, about 18% on ESPN. Coulibaly's coming off a stellar performance against the Hawks on Wednesday. He finished with a career high 27 points, 9 boards, 3 steals, 1 block, and 3 3-pointers in 35 minutes. On the season, he's averaging 18.8 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.5 steals, and 2 threes on terrific shooting. So he is shooting 59% from the floor, 83% from the line, 42% from downtown. Obviously, a wing player is not going to shoot 59% from the floor. So that is going to come down a little bit. Still, I think the breakout's legit. He's currently ranked as a top 50 fantasy player on a per game value basis. 10, like I mentioned at the jump, 10 to 12 team leagues. I'm adding him if he's available. Just expect that field goal percentage to level out a little bit. I do think there's room for other areas to see growth, though. He could do more on the defensive end. He's an absolute terror there. And I do expect his assist numbers to creep up as well. He's a very good playmaker and starting to get better and more comfortable with the ball and setting up his teammates.
In the preseason, we saw him handling the basketball a little bit more, and it's bearing out here. I don't know if you mentioned this. Kyle Kuzma has been out. He doesn't really have a firm timetable. I think it's a groin injury. Obviously, they're not going to rush him back. No reason to. And frankly, like Washington, besides Jordan Poole, just needs somebody to handle the ball and make plays.
Mm-hmm.
And Coulibaly, they invested a lot in him, so I think he can be that guy. Definitely worth a pickup in a lot of leagues.
They have two young pieces that they're really building around. They drafted Sarr this year. He's going to be a big piece. And Coulibaly's the other guy. They drafted him last year. Kuzma and Poole, if they can get out from under those contracts and get other rebuilding pieces, they gladly will. So I think they're going to let Coulibaly run wild this year.
Well, we just talked Wizards, so I'll go to one of my waiver wire suggestions, which is Alex Sarr, I was kind of surprised to see he is only rostered in 30% of Yahoo, 20% of ESPN leagues. I know he has obviously not been lighting the world on fire. He's shooting 30% from the field for 8 points per game in 24 minutes, right? That's not very good. But he's also averaging 6 rebounds, 2.5 blocks, and about a steal a game. Had career high 4 blocks the other night. Only 3 games this week, so this is more like a, grab Sarr, stash him. Don't have to start him this week. But if you need defense, if you're looking at your blocks category and it's low, not a lot of better options out there than Sarr, especially guys who, if they start shooting better, if Sarr pushes up to 30 minutes a game and he starts shooting it better, I know it's a lot of ifs, but it's going to be 13 points a game with 2.5 blocks and a steal, 8 rebounds. That kind of guy is just not generally available on the waiver wire in terms of like a full season ad. And we always talk about guys like, Walker Kessler or whoever else, like, they're just worth it for the blocks. You take the good with the bad. I think Sarr right now fits into that category, even if it's a little bit of a hit on your field goal percentage.
Totally agree. The 2.5 blocks is super encouraging. We saw Sarr struggle he had games where he was 0 for or 1 for 14 or whatever it was in the preseason, in the summer league. He's going to have duds like that on the offensive end, but hopefully he rounds into form as the season wears on. My second free agent pickup, another guy who's coming off a gigantic game, Nick Richards, center for the Charlotte Hornets, 36% roster on Yahoo, 20 on ESPN. Through 4 games, Richards is averaging 13.5 points, 11.8 rebounds, 2.5 blocks, while shooting 65% from the floor and 60% from the charity stripe. That's good enough to have him ranked as a top 50 per game value. His monster outing against the Raptors on Wednesday, he finished with 24 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 blocks, 1 steal. That's likely going to be his best game of the season. That's the one caveat here. I don't think we'll ever see Nick Richards have a better game than that in his NBA career. But he had back-to-back double-doubles in the 2 games prior. I am skeptical he's going to retain much fantasy value once Mark Williams returns. We don't know when that is. Much like Middleton, there hasn't been a ton of news with Mark Williams, but while Williams is out, you should roster and start Richards comfortably. He's going to be, a walking double-double, and he's producing enough on the defensive end where he's going to give you those blocks as well. The only negative for him right now is nothing from 3-point, and his free throw percentage will be bad.
Yeah, Richards just a solid big man who, I'm with you, just should be rostered while Mark Williams is out. I mean, if you can catch lobs from LaMelo Ball and grab some rebounds, that's all you need. Like he's going to get it done. Someone asked in the chat, Peter R, is Mark Williams worth stashing? I would say yes if you have the spot, but it's probably not going to kill you if you like have to drop him and try to stream in some stats for the meantime. I'm stashing Williams in a couple of leagues because I have IRs and I can deal with it. But Richards has been so good and Mark Williams has been so injury prone. I wonder if that ends up being a little bit more of a minute split than it was in the past. We will see. My next waiver wire suggestion, Jordan Hawkins of the New Orleans Pelicans, 27% rostered in Yahoo, 16% on ESPN. We saw him pop off last year, so there's nothing really new here. The reason I'm suggesting him is because DeJounte Murray's probably out until December. McCollum needs an MRI in his adductor. We'll see what the results are there, but it's possible he's out for a while. Herb Jones is banged up. I think Tice is banged up. Hawkins, look, he's a microwave scorer. He is points and he is threes. In 31 minutes per game this season, 16 points, 2.5 threes. The percentages are pretty sustainable, so that's legit. Pels only have 3 games this week, so that's upcoming, I should say, next week. That's a little bit of a concern if you like desperately need a streamer. But if McCollum ends up being out for a couple of weeks, this is certainly a guy that that would be worth adding and hanging on to for a while.
Absolutely. We know what we're getting from Hawkins, and with that team shorthanded, solid pickup option. The guy I mentioned earlier, Ant Black, guard, Orlando Magic, 4% rostered on Yahoo when I checked yesterday afternoon, 3% on ESPN. I'm sure that has gone up since Banchero news hit. Black stats to date don't really pop off out of the box score, but he's quietly providing well-rounded production off the bench for the Magic. Through 5 games, 20-year-old second-year guard has averaged 8.4 points, 3.2 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.4 blocks in just under 26 minutes per. He's basically made Cole Anthony an afterthought for Orlando. And I expect, even after Banchero returns, that Black is going to eat into KCP's role more. Remember, Black, he was the number 6 overall pick last year. He's great, got great size for a guard, 6'7". He's an absolute menace on the defensive side of the ball. That's why I was confused when they brought in KCP, because I just felt like Ant Black's already got that perimeter defense, and they should just ride the young guys. But KCP gives them a good veteran presence. Deeper leagues, this isn't even deeper leagues play anymore. This is for, I think, 10 and 12 teamers. I'm grabbing Black with the assumption that he's going to get that first spot start for Banchero. And even if he doesn't start, his minutes are certainly going to increase. If he's playing 28, 30 minutes per game, he's a guy who can get you 10, 4, 5 with great defensive stats, and hopefully get enough percentages to keep his overall value afloat.
Yeah, when we started preparing for this podcast yesterday, it was before the Banchero news, and we had sort of labeled, Coulibaly as the biggest pickup. And I think Coulibaly is still a big pickup, but it's probably Anthony Black now is sort of the headline waiver wire pickup between those guys. So you're 100% right on Black. Really the only, I think, the weakness in his game is he's not a great shooter. But you rattled off his stats in 25 minutes a game, 8 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block and a half. He's someone who could easily, I wouldn't be surprised if he with a 10-10-10 triple-double at some point, while Banchero is out. So just a really well-rounded guy who should be valuable in category leagues and in points leagues.
Absolutely. And Magic fans, if you've watched Magic game, it's impossible not to have noticed him this year.
Right. My last waiver wire suggestion, we'll both have guys from the Raptors here. Jamal Shead, 1% rostered on Yahoo when I checked, and did not have an ESPN roster rate last night. Number 45 overall pick in this year's draft. He's played at least 18 minutes in every game, averaging 8 points, 6 assists, and a half steal in 20 minutes per game. 6 assists in 20 minutes per game. That's really what's standing out for me, and it's been pretty steady. It's not like he had 14 and then 2 and then, it's been consistent. Who knows when Emmanuel Quickley is coming back and Scotty Barnes is out for weeks. Raptors have 4 games for week 3. And if you're in a daily moves league, they plan this low volume Saturday coming up. Now it's possible Quickly is back by then, but even if he is, Barnes is still going to be out. And I think Shed could still be worth playing, especially in the, like I said, the low volume Saturday if you're in a daily league.
Yep, I like that pickup, and we're gonna stay in Toronto for our final pickup of the segment. Jonathan Mogbo, forward for Toronto, 5% rostered on Yahoo, 1% on ESPN. As Alex mentioned, Scotty Barnes is out. He's out for at least 3 weeks due to the orbital fracture. It was Mogbo who received the first start with Barnes out. He started at power forward. He's more of a traditional power forward than Scotty Barnes is. Mogbo's calling card is going to be his defense. He is terrifying out there to watch. He just harasses his offensive opponent nonstop. In just 16.6 minutes per game this season, he's averaging 1.2 steals and 1 block. He could just be, he could easily be a guy that approaches like 4 stocks per game if he's playing 25 minutes. He'll score enough. He'll get enough rebounds. He'll even hit an occasional 3. I don't think that offense is going to be a big part of his game. But he's shooting well enough from the free throw line, 86.7% so far. I like him. I like him quite a bit, and was already picking him up in some of our deeper leagues. Grabbed him, I think, in our staff keeper league before the Barnes injury, and he looks very good. And I wouldn't be surprised. He's a guy who, with these 3 weeks, at least 3 weeks with Barnes out, he earns long-term playing time from that.
Mogbo was a guy, ironically, who we do a project here at RotoWire, but we do a bunch of scouting reports on upcoming rookies. And I had the Jonathan Mogbo scouting report. And so that dude is a monster, man. Came up like through community college, I think. Just high energy, can do a little bit of everything. The shot's the weakness, but that's like the weakness. He can pass. He's a bully. Basically everything Shannon already mentioned. So I'm a big Mogbo guy. He 100% fits what the Raptors have done in years past. Like 100% a Raptors scouting report guy. So definitely a strong pickup for someone who is single-digit roster percentage. Certainly worth rostering. All right, before we move on and talk about DraftKings Pick 6, we have a message from our very own Nick Whalen.
Here at RotoWire, we're proud to be partnered up with DraftKings Pick6 this NBA season. Think your team will score more than 100 points tonight? How about your favorite point guard making more than 4 3-pointers? Check out DraftKings Pick6, the newest way to play fantasy basketball and win cash with DraftKings. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. So for hoops, we're talking points, assists, rebounds, etc. Lock in those picks. Compete against opponents for your shot at huge cash prizes. Go download the new DraftKings Pick6 app right now and use our code ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. That's code ROTOPICK for new Pick6 customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick6 credits guaranteed. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, let's talk some Pick 6. I believe it's 9 games today on the slate. As always, if you're looking for injury news, check the RotoWire lineups page. We also post DFS articles. We post a best bets article. So if you're looking for any information, there should be stuff in there. Shannon, on this slate, where is the first place you are turning to?
Yeah, there are really 2 overs or more thans that I really like tonight. The first being Jamal Murray against the Minnesota Timberwolves. 23.5 points plus assists. Now, Jamal Murray had a rough season debut, but he's basically been the Jamal Murray we would expect in the 3 games since then. That first game against OKC was also basically a blowout. But 3 games since, Jamal Murray's averaging 21 points and 5 assists. 21 plus 5 is 26. That's more than 23 and a half. And I think there's upside for plenty more with Jamal Murray, especially in what should be a very competitive game against Minnesota. These are 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference. The demise of Denver is silly. That's not happening yet. It's not going to happen this season. I expect Murray to go out there and easily approach 30 for points plus assists tonight.
This is a buy low spot for him. He's shooting 37% from the field, but he's seeing a ton of minutes. He's played 37 minutes in every game. And obviously, like you alluded to, they need him. So it's a tough matchup for sure, but the number is pretty low. I don't know how this number even theoretically gets much lower than this throughout the course of the season. So I do like this as an opportunity just to try to hit the bounce on the way back up.
Absolutely. The second guy I'm targeting is Anthony Simons, point guard for the Portland Trail Blazers. Plays OKC, another tough matchup, but he's at 24.5 points plus assists. He's averaging 27.5 points plus assists over the past 4 games. He's had 2 duds this year, and the other 3 games he went well above this. There is some risk because I think he's more prone to go out there and have a dud than say a Jamal Murray would be, and Portland's also more likely to get blown out and have this game get out of hand early. But I think there's a good chance Simons easily eclipse that 24.5 points plus assists.
I mean, I agree with you. There's a decent chance for a blowout here. In the opener, they lost 140 to 104, and Simons played 33 minutes. They also lost 125 to 103 against the Pelicans, and Simons played 33 minutes. So there are some guys where, yes, I think you should be concerned about a blowout. I don't know if Simons is one of those guys. And you mentioned he can have pop games, and that's what you're looking for. That's what you're looking for.
All right. Well, I've got one more, and I'm going to go with an under that I really like for tonight. Zion Williamson, New Orleans Pelicans play Indiana. Decent matchup. I like that for Zion, but the points plus rebounds at 36.5. Zion is averaging over the past in his 4 games this year. He's averaging 26, 27. It's just about 20, 27, just under 27 total points plus rebounds. 36.5 seems very lofty. I watched those back-to-back games against the Warriors. I'm not very impressed with Zion so far this year. From a aesthetically pleasing standpoint and just pure enjoyment, I honestly, he might be one of my least favorite NBA players to watch.
I love this.
The electric dunks are great and all, but on a possession by possession basis, 80% of the possessions are just painful, man. I'm out on Zion, and I don't think he even sniffs 36.5 points plus rebounds tonight.
I went back to back on the Pelicans spread on the Warriors twice, and let me tell you, the Pelicans are I'm not high on them right now. But you're right. I mean, I don't know if maybe this number assumes that Miles Turner is out. Miles Turner is questionable, but I agree with you, man. We should be 100% seeing more out of Zion.
Dude, he's never approached an average of 36.5. This line is wild to me. Even in his best years, he's never approached this. So it's just, I think that's an easy smash for the under at 36.5 points plus rebounds. All right. Now, before we close out this segment, in past years, we always shared our favorite DFS picks. So I'm gonna share some of my favorite DFS picks for the main slate of DraftKings GPPs tonight, and we're gonna start with Orlando. Jalen Suggs, You know, we talked about Ant Black, we talked about Isaac and Wagner and some of these guys that are going to see a increased role due to Banchero being out. Suggs is the guy who might benefit the most. We could see like a totally different version of Suggs, and he's already been lights out. He's averaged 45 fantasy points per game over the past 3. And despite that, he's still only 5,800 on DraftKings. Tough matchup in Cleveland tonight, but I don't know how Suggs doesn't easily provide solid value at that $5,800 salary. Good bet to top 40 fantasy points again tonight.
Yeah, and this is, you mentioned the matchup, man. Cleveland is a nightmare. And as much as I like, Mo Wagner to come in and have a good game, and he still might hit value in a DFS setting. He's going to be going up against Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, as well, Wendell Carter. And I actually assume Evan Mobley's going to be on Franz Wagner if Wagner is available. Wagner is questionable right now. But if Wagner is out, that will only make your Suggs play better. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah. There just in general, a lot of the players have been popping off that we already talked about in this episode or recent episodes, like Dennis Schroeder, Nick Richards, Josh Hart. These guys are all averaging close, some of 35 or more fantasy points, but they're like Jalen Suggs is, but their salary adjustments haven't really kicked in yet this year. Schroeder's getting a little bit more expensive. He's at 6,800, but again, averaging 42 fantasy points per game. Josh Hart is at 5,900. He's averaging just under 36 fantasy points per game. Nick Richards, his price is starting to creep up. He's at 5,800 now, but still at under 6,000, coming off a 58.5 point fantasy game, which, was before that big outing, 36.5 fantasy points, 34 fantasy points when he was under $5,000. But, I think with Williams out, Richards is a good bet to have another 30 to 40 fantasy points. And at 5,800, solid value. So these are all guys I like. And one player who is getting a true spot start. We already know CJ McCollum's out. Jose Alvarado is going to be starting at point guard. He had a point guard, or he had a spot start against the Wizards on Wednesday, I believe. 35 minutes, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, 1 steal, 35 fantasy points. We know what he can do when given the minutes. And at $4,600 for his salary, I think he's a solid play for GPP contest tonight.
4,600. He could get that just off of steals and blocks.
Right.
I like targeting those kinds of guys who are high steal and block per minute guys, because if Alvarado does that and he also gets hot shooting, that's a pop spot, especially if Nembhard and Turner are out. Softer matchup. There's a lot trending in the right direction for Alvarado.
One final potential buy low option in DFS, Halliburton. Halliburton's coming off a 50 and a 48.5 point fantasy outing. His DFS salary on DraftKings is down to 8,000, probably the lowest I've ever seen him. Everyone knows his struggles have been talked about quite a bit, but he's starting to round into form, and at 8,000, and the fact that he can pop off for 50 fantasy points relatively easily makes him an intriguing play for this slate as well.
100%. That is a bargain bin price for someone who has the upside of Halliburton. Okay, Shannon, do you have a middle-aged man rant for us?
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, our most loyal fan of the pod, Ramesh, we love Ramesh, but he was dogging me for hyping up Jaden Ivey. Ramesh stated in the comments, usually I treat Shannon's suggestions as the gospel truth. Smart man, Ramesh, but not when it comes to Pistons guards. Jaden Ivey is the new Killian Hayes.
Whoa.
Man, that got my blood boiling. Really grinded on my gears. Through 5 games, Ivy is averaging 21.2 points, 4.4 boards, 3.6 assists, 1.2 steals, and 2.4 threes. He looks like a totally different dude than last season. He no longer has Monty Williams messing with his head, destroying his confidence by sliding him in and out of the starting lineup for the first month or two of the season. This guy is confident. His stroke is legit. His 3-point stroke is just straight butter. It's wet. He is clearly the second option for the Pistons and will continue to be so for the remainder of the season. When you watch him play, the only logical thought that could pop in your head is this dude's going to make an all-star game in the future. Jaden Ivey's breakout is legit. He is not the next Killian Hayes, Ramesh. Take it back.
Ivey's been great, man. Ivey was a late round grab for me in a ton of leagues. Ton of mocks. I felt like you and I both were trying to put the good word out there about the Jaden Ivey potential breakout season. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Remember, rotowire.com/pod for the look behind the paywall. DraftKings Pick6 and Vivid Seats. Thank you. And don't forget, check out the RotoWire Picks and Props app. You should be able to just search that on your iPhone or your Android device. It's a great new app from us. That will wrap it up for us. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next week.